Marcus Chen stepped off the transport shuttle, his military duffel bag slung over one shoulder and his prosthetic left arm gleaming silver in the afternoon sun. The University of New Geneva looked exactly as he remembered from the recruitment hollows 12 years ago, except now towering alien students walked alongside humans across the quad. Tall, blue-skinned Zephyrians with their characteristic head crests moved in groups, while the insectoid klaxons skittered between buildings on their 6 legs. The war against the Void Hunters had ended 3 years ago, and Marcus had spent those years in rehabilitation, learning to use his new cybernetic limb and dealing with the trauma of losing half his squad on Kepler 442b. Now, at 32, he was finally using his veteran benefits to pursue the engineering degree he'd dreamed of since childhood. The admissions office buzzed with activity. A harried-looking human woman behind the desk looked up as Marcus approached, her eyes briefly flickering to his prosthetic before meeting his gaze. "Marcus Chen reporting for enrollment," he said, falling back on military formality. "Oh yes, the veteran student. Welcome to UNG." She handed him a data pad. "You'll be in mixed species dormitories. The university believes integration is crucial for future galactic cooperation." Marcus nodded, though something in her tone suggested not everyone shared that enthusiasm. As he made his way across campus, he noticed the subtle segregation. Humans clustered together, aliens kept to their own groups, and the few mixed gatherings seemed tense. His roommate assignment led him to a modern dormitory, where he found his door already open. Inside, a Zephyrian student was arranging belongings on one side of the room. The alien was tall, nearly 7 feet, with deep blue skin and an elegant head crest that shifted colors with his emotions. "You must be Marcus," the Zephyrian said, in accented but clear English. "I am Kyleth of the Southern Winds. Most humans simply call me Kai." Marcus set down his bag and extended his flesh hand. "Nice to meet you, Kai. Hope you don't mind rooming with an old soldier." Kai's crest shifted to a warm purple. "Old, you appear quite young by human standards, and I have great respect for those who served in the war. My own clutch brother fought alongside human forces at the Battle of Proxima Station." "Good battle," Marcus said quietly. "Lost a lot of good people there, but we held the line." The moment stretched between them, heavy with shared understanding of loss. Kai's crest deepened to a solemn blue. "I am studying xenobiology," Kai offered, clearly wanting to change the subject. "What brings a veteran to academic pursuit?" "Engineering. Always wanted to build things instead of destroying them." Marcus gestured to his prosthetic. "Figure I've got some personal insight into cybernetics now, too." That evening, Marcus attended his first class orientation. The lecture hall was a testament to the new galactic age. Environmental controls adjusted for different atmospheric preferences, seating designed for various body types, and translation devices for those still learning Standard Galactic. Professor Williams, a stern-faced human woman, stood at the podium. "This is Introduction to Galactic Engineering Principles. You'll be working in mixed species teams throughout the semester. The galaxy doesn't segregate by species when it comes to engineering challenges, and neither will this class." A ripple of unease went through the human students. Marcus heard whispers behind him. "Great, stuck working with bugs and fish people. How are we supposed to compete for jobs if they're giving aliens the same education?" Marcus turned around, his gray eyes hard. "Those bugs and fish people saved my life more times than I can count. Maybe show some respect." The whispering stopped, but Marcus felt the hostile stares. He was already being labeled as an alien sympathizer, and classes hadn't even started yet. After orientation, Marcus walked across campus under the twin moons of Proxima Centauri b. He paused at a memorial wall listing the names of students and faculty who had died in the war. Human, Zephyrian, Klaxon, and a dozen other species names were carved side by side. "They died as one people," came a voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Kai approaching, his crest a thoughtful silver. "Yeah, they did. Too bad the living can't seem to figure that out." Kai stood beside him, both looking up at the thousands of names. "Change is difficult, Marcus Chen, but perhaps that is why veterans like you choose to return to school, to build the peace you fought for." Marcus touched one name on the wall, Sergeant Maria Santos, his squad leader who had died saving a Klaxon medic. "Maybe. Or maybe I just want to make sure their sacrifice meant something." As they walked back to the dormitory, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his real battles were just beginning. The classroom might be a different kind of battlefield, but the war for the future of galactic civilization was far from over. Marcus arrived at his first engineering lab early, hoping to get a feel for the equipment before the chaos of group assignments began. The lab was impressive. Holographic displays, quantum computers, and fabrication units that could assemble materials at the molecular level. Everything he'd dreamed of working with during those long nights in the trenches. Other students filtered in gradually. The human students clustered near the front, while the alien students took seats toward the back. The division was subtle but unmistakable. Professor Williams entered with a Klaxon teaching assistant whose name placard read, Dr. Zixathera, the insectoid professor, moved with surprising grace on her 6 legs, her compound eyes reflecting the lab's bright lights. Today you'll be forming your semester project teams, Professor Williams announced. Each team will design and build a functional atmospheric processor capable of terraforming a dead world. You'll need diverse skill sets: biological knowledge, atmospheric chemistry, mechanical engineering, and systems integration. She began reading names from her datapad. Team Alpha, Chen, Marcus, Kyleth of the Southern Winds, Jennifer Walsh, Rooktar the Stone Singer. Marcus glanced around and spotted his teammates. Jennifer Walsh was a petite human girl who looked barely 18, with nervous energy and thick glasses. Rooktar was a massive, rock-like being from the mineral world of Petra Prime, standing nearly 8 feet tall with crystalline formations growing from his shoulders. As the teams gathered, Marcus heard grumbling from other human students. Of course the alien lover gets stuck with the freak squad, someone muttered. Jennifer looked uncomfortable as she approached. I'm Jennifer. I'm majoring in atmospheric sciences. I've never really worked with... I haven't had much experience with aliens? Kai asked gently, his crest shifting to an understanding yellow. Jennifer blushed. I'm sorry. That sounded awful. I just grew up on a human colony world. This is all new to me. Rooktar's voice rumbled like grinding stone. Fear is natural when facing the unknown. I too have never worked closely with humans or Zephyrians. But rock teaches patience, and patience teaches understanding. Marcus looked around at his team. A shy human girl, a diplomatic alien, a philosophical rock being, and a veteran with more baggage than luggage. Not exactly what the recruitment hollows would call an ideal team. All right, Marcus said, taking charge. Let's see what we're working with. Jennifer, atmospheric composition. Kai, what's your background? Xenobiology, with emphasis on extremophile organisms. Many terraforming projects fail because they ignore biological factors. And you, Rooktar. I am a geologist. My people shape worlds through understanding of stone and mineral, but I also study mechanical systems. Rock and metal are not so different, Marcus nodded. Good spread of knowledge. I've got combat engineering experience, and now I'm learning civilian applications. Let's look at the project requirements. They spent the rest of the lab session reviewing the parameters. They needed to design a processor that could transform a dead, airless world into something capable of supporting human-like life. The catch was that it also had to accommodate the needs of other species. Zephyrians needed higher humidity, Klaxons required specific mineral content in the soil, and rock beings like Rooktar needed particular geological conditions. This is impossible, Jennifer said, looking overwhelmed. How can we make one world suitable for everyone? The galaxy is full of impossibilities that became realities, Kai observed. Consider how unlikely it was that so many species would unite against the Void Hunters. He's right, Marcus added. I've seen human engineers and Zephyrian scientists solve problems neither could handle alone. Diversity isn't a weakness. It's a force multiplier. As they worked, Marcus noticed other teams struggling with similar integration issues. Team Beta, composed entirely of humans, was designing something that would create a Earth-like environment with no consideration for other species. Team Gamma, with mostly Klaxons, focused purely on mineral processing. Look at them, Jennifer whispered, nodding toward the all-human team. They're going to finish so much faster without having to accommodate everyone. Maybe, Marcus said, but their solution will only work for one species. Ours will work for everyone. Dr. Zixathera approached their table, her compound eyes taking in their design hologram. Interesting approach. You are attempting true multi-species compatibility. Is that wrong? Jennifer asked nervously. Wrong? No. Ambitious? Yes, most teams focus on single-species solutions because they are simpler. The Klaxon professor tilted her head. But simple solutions rarely work in the real galaxy. Please continue. After class, the team gathered in the library to continue working. Other students gave them curious looks. It was rare to see such a mixed group studying together. I have been thinking, Ruktar said in his deep, gravelly voice. Perhaps we approach this wrong. Instead of making one environment for all, we create zones within zones, layers like sediment in stone. Kai's crest brightened to an excited gold. Microclimates, different atmospheric conditions in different regions of the same world. But how do you transition between them? Jennifer asked, leaning forward despite her earlier nervousness. Marcus smiled. Gradual shifts, like the different climate zones on Earth, but artificial. We're not just building an atmospheric processor. We're building a world. As they worked late into the evening, Marcus realized something had changed. Jennifer was asking questions without apologizing for her ignorance. Kai was sharing stories about Zephyrian terraforming techniques. Ruktar was explaining geological principles with the passion of a true teacher. They weren't just teammates anymore. They were becoming something the galaxy desperately needed. Proof that different species could work together as equals, each contributing their unique strengths. But Marcus also noticed the hostile stares from across the library, the whispered conversations that stopped when they walked by. Building bridges was hard work, and not everyone wanted to see them succeed. The cafeteria incident happened 3 weeks into the semester. Marcus was eating lunch with his team when Derek Morrison, a senior human student, approached their table with several friends. Mind if we join you? Derek asked, but his tone suggested it wasn't really a question. He sat down without waiting for an answer, his friends flanking him. Heard you guys are working on some kind of alien paradise project, Derek continued, his voice loud enough to draw attention from nearby tables. Real cute, but this is the real world. Chen. Humans are competing against these species for jobs, for resources, for the future of our own kind. Kai's crest shifted to a wary orange, but his voice remained calm. We are all students here learning together. Learning together? Derek laughed harshly. You think the Zephyrians are going to hire human engineers when they can hire their own? You think the Klaxons are going to share their mineral wealth with us out of gratitude? They already have, Marcus said quietly. The Galactic Trade Compact ensures paper promises, Derek interrupted. My uncle lost his mining operation to Klaxon Megacore. They can work in conditions that would kill humans, so they undercut every human bid. Your alien friends here are taking food out of human mouths. Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. Maybe you should wake up, Derek said, turning to her. You're a smart girl, Jennifer. Top of your atmospheric sciences class. But you're wasting your talents helping aliens learn human techniques they'll use against us. Ruktar's deep voice rumbled like an earthquake. Young human speaks of competition as if it is war. War is over. Now comes building. Is it over? Derek stood up, his friends rising with him. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like we won the war just to lose the peace. Humans died to protect the galaxy, and now we're giving it away to the same aliens we bled for. The cafeteria had gone quiet. Students from all species watched the confrontation unfold. Marcus felt the familiar tension in his shoulders that preceded combat. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was exactly the kind of situation that could spark the very conflicts he'd fought to prevent. You want to talk about who died? Marcus stood slowly, his prosthetic hand clenching. I was there when Lieutenant Torres gave his life to save a Zephyrian medical unit. I held Corporal Kim while she bled out protecting a Klaxon supply convoy. They didn't die so we could go back to hating each other. They died so humans could survive. Derek shot back. And what do we have to show for it? Aliens in our schools, taking our jobs, living in our space. We saved them and now they're replacing us. That's enough. Professor Williams appeared at Marcus's shoulder, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to managing conflicts. Mr. Morrison, this kind of rhetoric has no place in an academic environment. Derek's face flushed red. With respect, Professor, this is exactly the place for it. We're supposed to be preparing for the real world, but instead we're pretending everything is sunshine and unity. These mixed teams are a joke. In 5 years, these aliens will be running Earth corporations while humans fight for scraps. The War Crimes Tribunal on Vega Station would disagree with your assessment, Dr. Zixthara said, appearing beside Professor Williams. Her compound eyes reflected the cafeteria lights as she looked at Derek. Humans showed remarkable courage and sacrifice, but they also showed wisdom in choosing cooperation over conquest. That wisdom is why we gather here as students, not as enemies. Derek looked around the room, realizing he'd lost the audience. Most students were looking at him with disgust or embarrassment rather than agreement. "This isn't over," he said. But the fight had gone out of him. He and his friends left the cafeteria, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence. Marcus sat back down, his hands shaking slightly. The familiar symptoms of combat stress were rising: elevated heart rate, hypervigilance, the urge to check exit routes. "Marcus?" Jennifer's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you okay?" He forced himself to breathe steadily. "Yeah, just flashbacks sometimes. Derek's not wrong about everything, you know." Kai's crest shifted to concerned blue. "You agree with his words?" "Not his conclusions, but his concerns. There are real economic pressures, real fears about the future. Humans went from being alone in the galaxy to sharing it with dozens of species in just a few decades." "That's a huge adjustment," Ruktar nodded slowly. "Change creates fear. Fear creates anger. Anger creates conflict, but also understanding creates acceptance. Acceptance creates growth." "Easy to say," Jennifer said quietly. But Derek had a point. "How do I know I'll get a job when I'm competing against people who can survive in atmospheres that would kill me?" "Because," Marcus said, "you bring something they don't. Human perspective, human solutions, human innovation. The galaxy doesn't need another Klaxon engineer or another Zephyrian biologist. It needs Jennifer Walsh, atmospheric scientist who happens to be human." Dr. Zixathera had lingered nearby, and now she approached their table. "If I may offer observation? In my experience, diversity in thinking leads to diversity in solutions. Homogeneous teams produce homogeneous results. Your team's approach to the terraforming project is unlike any I have seen. Not because you are different species, but because you think differently." After the professors left, the team sat in thoughtful silence. Finally, Kai spoke. "Derek's anger comes from fear, but fear can be teacher if we listen correctly." "What do you mean?" Jennifer asked. "His concerns about economic displacement are real. Many humans do face uncertainty. But solution is not separation, it is integration. We must prove that cooperation benefits all." Marcus nodded. "Our project isn't just about building an atmospheric processor. It's about showing that mixed teams can achieve things pure teams can't." "No pressure," Jennifer said with a weak smile. Ruktar's laugh sounded like rocks tumbling down a mountain. "Pressure shapes diamonds, small human. Perhaps it will shape us as well." As they left the cafeteria, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that Derek's confrontation was just the beginning. The real battle for the future of galactic civilization wouldn't be fought with weapons. It would be fought in classrooms, laboratories, and cafeterias across the galaxy. Marcus discovered the sabotage 3 days before their project presentation. He'd arrived at the lab early to run final diagnostics on their atmospheric processor prototype when he found the quantum computer displaying error, messages in 16 different languages. "Someone's been in our files," he called to his teammates as they arrived. "Our entire atmospheric modeling system has been corrupted." Jennifer went pale. "All of it?" "We've been working on those models for 6 weeks. Kai's crest flashed angry red. "This is deliberate. The corruption is too precise to be accidental." Ruktar examined the computer with surprising gentleness for someone with hands like boulders. "Files are damaged but not destroyed. Like cracking stone, pieces remain waiting to be reassembled." Marcus felt the familiar cold rage that had gotten him through too many battles. "Check the access logs. Let's see who paid us a visit." The logs showed entry at 2:30 a.m. using Derek Morrison's student access card. Marcus wasn't surprised, but seeing the proof still hit like a punch to the gut. "We should report this to Professor Williams," Jennifer said, but her voice lacked conviction. "And say what?" Marcus asked. "That Derek sabotaged our project because he disagrees with interspecies cooperation? It'll sound like we're making excuses. But it is truth," Kai protested. "Truth doesn't always matter if you can't prove it beyond doubt." Derek's smart enough to cover his tracks. They spent the morning trying to reconstruct their work from backup files and memory. The processor itself was intact, but without the detailed atmospheric models, they couldn't demonstrate how their multi-zone approach would work on an actual planet. "This is hopeless," Jennifer said, pushing back from the computer in frustration. "We'll never recreate 6 weeks of modeling in 3 days." "Perhaps," Ruktar said slowly, "we approach this differently. Stone teaches patience but also adaptation. When path is blocked, find new path." "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked. Our approach was to model perfect conditions for each species. But galaxy is not perfect. Real terraforming deals with imperfection with compromise. Kai's crest shifted to thoughtful silver. Ruktar is correct. We were designing for ideal conditions that do not exist. Real worlds have complications. An idea began forming in Marcus's mind. What if that's our advantage? Every other team is presenting perfect theoretical models. What if we present a real-world solution? How? Jennifer asked. Marcus gestured to the four of them. We've been working together for weeks. We've had to adapt to each other's different ways of thinking, different needs, different perspectives. We've already solved the real problem. I do not understand, Kai said. The hardest part of terraforming isn't the technology. It's getting different species to agree on what a habitable world looks like. But we've done that. We've found ways to communicate, to compromise, to build something together. Ruktar's eyes gleamed like polished stone. Humans suggest we present ourselves as solution. Not ourselves exactly, but our process. How we learned to work together. How we resolved conflicts, how we found common ground. The atmospheric processor is just hardware. The real innovation is the software, the social engineering that makes it possible. Jennifer looked skeptical. You think Professor Williams will buy that? I think, Marcus said, that she'll understand it better than anyone. She's been trying to teach us that engineering isn't just about building things. It's about building bridges between different ways of thinking. They spent the next 3 days completely reimagining their presentation. Instead of focusing on perfect atmospheric models, they documented their collaborative process. They showed how Kai's biological knowledge had informed Ruktar's geological approach. They demonstrated how Jennifer's atmospheric expertise had been enhanced by incorporating non-human environmental needs. They explained how Marcus's military experience had taught them to plan for system failures and adapt to changing conditions. The night before the presentation, they gathered in the common room to practice one final time. Other students were doing the same, their voices carrying across the space as they rehearsed technical specifications and efficiency ratings. Are we making a mistake? Jennifer asked quietly. Everyone else is presenting actual engineering solutions. We're presenting, what, friendship? We are presenting proof, Kai said firmly. Proof that different species can create together what none could create alone. But what if it's not enough? Jennifer persisted. What if Professor Williams thinks we're avoiding the real work? Marcus looked at his teammates, a nervous human girl who'd learned to see past her own prejudices, a diplomatic alien who'd found ways to bridge cultural gaps, and a philosophical rock being who'd taught them all about patience and adaptation. Then we fail together, he said simply. But we fail knowing we tried to build something better than just another atmospheric processor. We tried to build a future. The presentation day arrived gray and rainy, matching Marcus's nervous energy. Teams presented throughout the morning, each showcasing impressive technical achievements. Team Beta had created an efficient processor that could terraform a world in just 50 years. Team Gamma had designed a system that required minimal maintenance and could adapt to unexpected geological changes. When their turn came, Marcus felt the familiar pre-combat calm settle over him. This was it. Everything they'd worked for came down to the next 20 minutes. Our team took a different approach, Marcus began, facing the panel of professors and the audience of students. We realized that the biggest challenge in terraforming isn't technical, it's social. How do you get different species to agree on what makes a world habitable? He nodded to his teammates and they began their presentation. Not a technical demonstration, but a story. The story of how 4 very different individuals had learned to work together, had found ways to bridge their differences, and had created something none of them could have built alone. They showed their processor, but more importantly, they showed their process, how they'd learned to communicate across species barriers, how they'd found compromises that satisfied everyone's needs, how they'd turned diversity from a challenge into a strength. As they spoke, Marcus watched the audience. Some students looked confused, others bored, but Professor Williams was leaning forward, her eyes bright with interest. Dr. Zixathara's compound eyes were fixed on the presentation with laser focus. When they finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then Professor Williams stood up. Questions? She asked the room. Derek Morrison raised his hand. This is very touching, but how does it actually work? Where are your efficiency ratings, your cost analyses, Your environmental impact studies? Marcus felt his team tense beside him, but he'd been expecting this. Our efficiency rating is measured differently, he said. Not in terms of speed or cost, but in terms of sustainability. A world terraformed by one species for one species will always be vulnerable to political changes, economic shifts, resource disputes. A world built by cooperation, for cooperation, creates stakeholders instead of competitors. That's not engineering, Derek said. That's philosophy. No, said Dr. Zixthera, speaking for the first time. That is wisdom. The aftermath of their presentation created ripples across the entire university. Marcus discovered this when he checked his student email the next morning and found over 200 messages waiting for him. Most were from other students, some supportive, others hostile, many just curious. But 3 messages stood out. One was from Dean Crassus requesting a meeting. Another was from a reporter for the Galactic Education Tribune. The third was from someone he hadn't expected to hear from. Marcus, Jennifer said, appearing at his dorm room door with her own datapad. Did you see the news feeds? He hadn't. But a quick search showed their presentation had been recorded and uploaded to several educational networks. Comments ranged from glowing praise to scathing criticism, with a few death threats mixed in for variety. Revolutionary approach to interspecies cooperation, Jennifer read from one review. Naive idealism that ignores economic realities, and she continued from another. We're famous, but I'm not sure that's a good thing. Kai emerged from his side of the room, his crest a worried purple. My family has contacted me from Zephyria. The presentation has reached the outer colonies. There is much discussion in the Council of Winds. Good discussion or bad discussion? Marcus asked. Both. Some see it as proof that integration is possible. Others see it as proof that our young are losing their cultural identity. The knock on their door interrupted the conversation. Marcus opened it to find Ruktar, whose massive frame filled the doorway completely. We have been summoned, the rock being announced. Dean Crassus wishes to see us immediately. The dean's office was intimidating by design, high ceilings, walls lined with academic achievements from across the galaxy, and a desk that seemed to stretch for miles. Dean Crassus himself was a distinguished human man in his 60s, with the kind of bearing that suggested he'd been managing difficult situations for decades. Sit, he said without preamble. They arranged themselves in the chairs facing his desk, an odd group that drew curious looks from his assistants. Your presentation has caused quite a stir, Dean Crassus began. The Galactic Education Council has received formal complaints from 3 different species governments, 6 human colony worlds, and approximately 47 individual organizations. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Complaints about what, sir? About the university promoting dangerous ideologies, cultural contamination, and economic naivety. There's also a petition from the Human Heritage Foundation demanding your expulsion. Jennifer went pale. Are we in trouble? Dean Crassus was quiet for a long moment, studying them with sharp eyes. That depends on your definition of trouble. Academically? Your grades are excellent. Your project demonstrated innovative thinking and practical application of theoretical principles. Politically, you've managed to anger some very influential people. We just tried to solve the assignment, Marcus said carefully. Oh, you solved it all right. You solved it so well that you forced people to confront some uncomfortable truths about the galaxy we're trying to build. The dean stood and walked to the window overlooking the campus. Do you know why this university was established here on Proxima Centauri B? They shook their heads. Because this was where the first interspecies colony was founded. Humans, Zephyrians, and Klaxons working together to build something new. It failed spectacularly within 5 years. Cultural conflicts, economic disputes, and a complete breakdown in communication. Why are you telling us this? Kai asked, his crest shifting nervous yellow. Because 30 years later they tried again, and failed again. It took 7 attempts over a century before they finally succeeded in creating a stable mixed colony. You know what made the difference? What? Jennifer asked. They stopped trying to maintain separation while pretending to cooperate. They stopped thinking of themselves as humans living near aliens or aliens living near humans. They started thinking of themselves as colonists. Dean Crassus turned back to face them. Your presentation demonstrates the same principle on an academic level. You didn't just work together, you became something new. A team that couldn't exist without all of its members. So we're not in trouble? Marcus asked. I didn't say that. The dean returned to his desk. The university is under pressure to disband mixed-species project teams. Several major donors are threatening to withdraw funding. The Board of Regents is meeting next week to discuss new policies. That's not fair, Jennifer protested. We proved mixed teams work better. Fairness and politics rarely intersect, Ms. Walsh. However, you've also attracted some powerful supporters. The Zephyrian Science Council has offered to establish an exchange program with any university that promotes interspecies cooperation. The Claxon Industrial Collective is proposing a massive research grant for mixed-species engineering projects. Ruktar's voice rumbled like distant thunder. So we have created new conflict by trying to prevent old one. Welcome to the real world, Dean Crassus said dryly. Every solution creates new problems. The question is whether the problems you create are better than the problems you solve. He pulled up a holographic display showing star charts. There are 17 worlds currently undergoing terraforming projects. Every single one is struggling with the same issue you addressed: how to create an environment that multiple species can call home. Your approach could revolutionize the field, or it could be completely ignored while everyone argues about politics, Marcus said. True, but that's not really your concern anymore. Dean Crassus smiled for the first time during the meeting. Congratulations. You've all been selected for the Advanced Cooperative Engineering Program. Full scholarships, accelerated curriculum, and guaranteed placement in the Galactic Terraforming Initiative upon graduation. The four of them stared at him in stunned silence. What's the catch? Marcus asked, his military training making him suspicious of anything that seemed too good to be true. The catch is that you'll be poster children for interspecies cooperation for the rest of your academic careers. Every presentation you give, every project you complete, every success and failure will be scrutinized by people looking for proof that their position is correct. And if we fail? Jennifer asked quietly. Then you'll set back the cause of galactic integration by decades. No pressure. As they left the dean's office, Marcus felt the weight of unexpected responsibility settling on his shoulders. He'd thought leaving the military meant leaving the burden of representing something larger than himself. Instead, he just signed up for a different kind of service. This is not what I expected when I came to university, Kai said, his crest shifting through confused colors. None of us did, Marcus replied, but maybe that's the point. The galaxy doesn't need more engineers who can design atmospheric processors. It needs engineers who can design a future. Ruktar placed a massive hand on Marcus's shoulder. In stone, pressure creates strength. Perhaps in us, pressure will create wisdom. As they walked across campus, Marcus noticed the same segregation patterns as before. Humans with humans, aliens with aliens. But now he also saw something new. A few mixed groups, students talking across species lines, tentative bridges being built. Change was slow, but it was happening. One conversation, one collaboration, one small act of courage at a time. The protest happened during the middle of Marcus's advanced atmospheric engineering midterm. He was deep into calculations about oxygen-nitrogen ratios when the chanting started outside the engineering building. Human jobs for human workers, Earth first, aliens last. Professor Williams looked up from her desk with a grimace. I apologize for the disruption. Please continue with your exams. Marcus tried to focus on the test, but the chanting grew louder. Through the window, he could see a crowd of about 50 protesters carrying signs with slogans like, Stop the Alien Takeover, and Segregation Now, Segregation Forever. At the front of the group, Derek Morrison held a megaphone. The University of New Geneva has betrayed humanity. Derek's amplified voice carried clearly through the walls. They're training aliens to replace human workers. They're destroying human culture in the name of false unity. A few rows behind Marcus, Jennifer was hunched over her test, trying to ignore the noise. Kai sat rigidly in his seat, his crest a deep troubled blue. Ruktar seemed unaffected, methodically working through problems with mineral-steady concentration. The protest continued for 3 hours. By the time Marcus finished his exam and stepped outside, the crowd had grown to nearly 200 people. Counter-protesters had arrived as well. Students and faculty carrying signs reading, Unity through diversity, and cooperation, not division. Marcus. Jennifer jogged up to him looking shaken. Did you see? They're calling for the university to ban mixed-species classes. He had seen. The protesters had specific demands. End the advanced cooperative engineering program, segregate dormitories by species, and establish quotas limiting alien enrollment to 10% of the student body. Where are Kai and Ruktar? Marcus asked, scanning the crowd. Inside, campus security thought it would be safer for them to wait until things calmed down. A news crew from the Galactic Broadcasting Network was interviewing Derek Morrison. Marcus caught fragments of the conversation as they pushed through the crowd. Economic terrorism against working humans, flood of alien labor undermining wages, cultural destruction disguised as progress. Marcus found himself getting angry, not just at Derek's words, but at how reasonable the man sounded. Derek wasn't ranting like a lunatic. He was presenting logical arguments that would appeal to people's real fears and concerns. We should go inside, Jennifer said, tugging at his arm. No. Marcus surprised himself with the firmness of his response. This is exactly what they want. For us to hide, to act ashamed of what we're doing. But what if it gets violent? Then we deal with it. But we don't run. The crowd was starting to separate into two distinct groups, pro-integration and anti-integration, with a growing tension between them. Marcus noticed campus security forming a line between the two factions, but they looked nervous and outnumbered. Citizens! A new voice cut through the chaos. Marcus turned to see Dean Crassus standing on the front steps of the engineering building, using a small amplifier. I understand there are concerns about the university's policies. I would like to address them. The crowd slowly quieted, though the tension remained thick. This university was founded on the principle that education should prepare students for the reality they will face after graduation. Dean Crassus began. The reality is that our galaxy is now multi-species. Engineers will work with Zephyrian scientists. Doctors will treat Klaxon patients. Architects will design buildings for rock-being families. That's the problem. Derek shouted from the crowd. You're training humans to be servants to alien masters. I'm training humans to be leaders in a galactic civilization, the dean replied calmly. And I'm training aliens to be partners in that leadership. The choice is simple. We can learn to work together, or we can be left behind as the galaxy moves forward without us. Lies, someone shouted. Humans built this civilization. We don't owe them anything. Marcus felt something snap inside him. Before he realized what he was doing, he was pushing through the crowd toward the front. You want to talk about who built what? His voice carried clearly across the suddenly quiet space. I was at the Battle of Kepler Station when Zephyrian pilots died protecting human evacuation ships. I was at Proxima Base when Klaxon engineers worked for 72 hours straight to repair our life support systems. The crowd turned to face him. Some recognized him from news coverage of their presentation. You want to know what I learned in the war? Marcus continued, his prosthetic hand gleaming in the afternoon sun. I learned that courage doesn't have a species. I learned that intelligence comes in forms we never expected. And I learned that humans are strongest when we're not trying to be superior to everyone else. Easy words from someone who sold out his own species. Derek called out. Marcus felt the familiar cold calm of combat settling over him. I didn't sell out humanity. I'm trying to save it. He gestured to the mixed crowd of students watching from the building windows. Look around you. This isn't some alien invasion. These are students. Kids who want to build things, discover things, make the galaxy better, and you want to divide them into us and them because you're afraid. Afraid of what? Derek demanded. Afraid that if we stop pretending we're the center of the universe, we might have to actually work for our place in it. The crowd was deadly quiet now. Marcus could feel the moment balanced on a knife's edge. It could tip toward violence or understanding, depending on what happened next. My best friend died on Vega Prime, Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly across the space. Maria Santos, a sergeant from Texas who spoke 3 languages and could fix anything with moving parts. She died saving a Klaxon medic who went on to develop the cure for Terran flu. That medic saved more human lives than any human doctor ever has. He paused, looking directly at Derek. Maria didn't die so we could go back to being afraid of each other. She died so we could build something better. The silence stretched out for what felt like hours. Then, slowly, a Zephyrian student stepped out of the building and walked to stand beside Marcus. Then another. A Klaxon joined them. Then a human. Then Ruktar's massive form appeared in the doorway. One by one, students of all species began emerging from the building, forming a growing crowd around Marcus. Not protesters or counter-protesters, just students standing together. Derek looked around at the diverse group surrounding Marcus, his face cycling through anger, confusion, and finally something that might have been understanding. "This isn't over," he said, but the fight had gone out of his voice. "No," Marcus agreed. "It's not. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the conversation is more important than winning." As the original protesters began to disperse, Marcus found himself surrounded by his fellow students. Humans, Zephyrian, Klaxon, and dozens of other species all talking at once, asking questions, sharing their own stories. Dean Crassus approached him with a smile. "Impressive speech, Mr. Chen. Have you considered a career in politics?" "God, no," Marcus replied. "I just want to build things." "Well, you've certainly built something here today," the dean observed, looking at the diverse crowd of students still engaged in animated conversation. As the afternoon wore on, and the crowd gradually dispersed, Marcus realized something had fundamentally changed, not just at the university but in him. He'd spent years as a soldier, fighting to protect human civilization. Now he was learning to be something new, a builder of the civilization that would come after. 2 years later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the terraforming station orbiting Kepler 442c, watching their atmospheric processor work its magic on the planet below. Swirls of manufactured clouds were beginning to form in what had been a sterile, airless sky just 6 months ago. "Initial readings are perfect," Jennifer reported from the control station. She'd grown into her confidence over the past 2 years, becoming the team's expert on atmospheric chemistry, oxygen levels rising steadily, humidity stabilizing in all zones. Kai approached with a data pad full of biological surveys. His crest was a satisfied green. "The extremophile bacteria are establishing successfully. We should see the first signs of grassland development within 3 months. Geological stability remains optimal," Rukhtar added, his deep voice carrying satisfaction. "Mineral distribution is proceeding as calculated. The foundation zones will support surface cities as planned." Marcus nodded, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. This wasn't just their first professional project since graduating. It was proof that their approach worked on a planetary scale. Kepler 442c would be the first truly integrated world, designed from the ground up to support multiple species. "Incoming transmission from Earth," the station's communication officer announced. "Priority message for the Kepler team." The holographic display activated, showing Dean Crassus sitting in his familiar office. Behind him, Marcus could see representatives from several species governments. "Congratulations," the dean began. "Initial reports from Kepler 442c have exceeded all expectations. The Galactic Terraforming Council has officially approved the expansion of integrated terraforming to 12 additional worlds." Marcus felt a surge of pride, tempered by exhaustion. 2 years of 18-hour days, constant pressure, and political scrutiny had taken their toll. But it had been worth it. "However," Dean Crassus continued, "there have been some developments you need to know about." The display split to show news footage from Earth. Protesters filled the streets of several major cities, carrying familiar signs demanding human-only policies. But there were counter-protesters too, in much larger numbers, calling for expanded integration. The Human Heritage Foundation has filed a lawsuit claiming that integrated terraforming violates human rights, the dean explained. "They're arguing that giving aliens equal access to new worlds amounts to species discrimination against humans." "That's ridiculous," Jennifer said. "Ridiculous but effective." The case has gained support from several colonial governments and 3 major corporations. There's a real possibility that the Galactic Council could suspend the integration program pending legal review. Marcus felt the familiar cold anger rising. "How long?" "The preliminary hearing is next month. The full trial could take years." Kai's crest shifted to troubled purple. "And during this time, all new terraforming projects are suspended. Existing projects like yours will continue, but no new funding will be approved." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Dozens of worlds that could be brought to life would remain dead. Millions of potential colonists would remain crowded on overcrowded homeworlds, all because some people couldn't accept that the galaxy was bigger than their own species. "There is one option," Dean Crassus said carefully. "The Zephyrian Council and the Klaxon Collective have offered to fund continued terraforming independently. They would welcome human participation, but they don't need it." The threat was clear. If humans chose separation, They would be left behind while other species continued to expand and develop new worlds. "What about Derek Morrison?" Marcus asked. The question surprised his teammates, but he'd been following his former adversary's career with interest. "Interesting that you ask. Mr. Morrison has become quite prominent in the human heritage movement. He's actually one of the lead plaintiffs in the lawsuit." After the transmission ended, the four of them stood quietly on the observation deck, watching their world take shape below. It was beautiful, a jewel of blue and green emerging from cosmic darkness. "We knew this day would come," Kai said finally. "Fear and progress always conflict. The question is what we do about it," Marcus replied. "What can we do?" Jennifer asked. "We're engineers, not politicians." "No," Ruktar rumbled. "We are builders. And sometimes what needs building is understanding." Marcus made a decision that surprised even him. "I'm going back to Earth." "What?" Jennifer stared at him. "Why?" "Because Derek was right about one thing. We never addressed the real concerns that drive people to oppose integration. We proved it could work, but we never proved it should work." "That makes no sense," Kai protested. "The benefits are obvious, to us, but not to a human worker who's afraid of losing his job to someone who can work in conditions that would kill him, not to a colonist who's worried about losing her cultural identity, not to families who've been told that their children's future depends on keeping other species out." Marcus gestured to the planet below. "This world is going to be home to maybe 10 million beings from a dozen different species. They're going to have to figure out how to live together, how to raise families together, how to build a society together. We can give them the technology, but we can't give them the wisdom. So you want to go back and teach wisdom to people who are suing to stop us?" Jennifer asked incredulously. "I want to go back and learn from them. Derek's not evil, he's afraid. And until we understand what he's afraid of, we can't address it." The decision sparked fierce debate among his teammates, but Marcus was determined. 3 weeks later, he stood in the arrivals terminal at Earth's primary spaceport, carrying a single bag and wearing civilian clothes for the first time in months. The news crews were waiting for him, of course. His return had been announced, and everyone wanted to know why one of the galaxy's most prominent integration advocates was coming home in the middle of the biggest legal challenge to interspecies cooperation in galactic history. "Mr. Chen," a reporter thrust a microphone toward him. "Are you here to testify in the Heritage Foundation lawsuit?" "I'm here to listen," Marcus replied simply. "Listen to what?" "To anyone who'll talk to me." He spent the next 6 months doing exactly that. He visited mining colonies where human workers had been displaced by Klaxon operations. He attended town halls where families expressed fears about their children being educated alongside alien species. He met with corporate executives who argued that human-only policies were necessary to protect Earth's economic interests. And slowly, gradually, he began to understand. The opposition to integration wasn't just prejudice. It was fear of a future that seemed to offer no place for human identity, human culture, human specialness. He also met with Derek Morrison in a small cafe in downtown Detroit. The man looked older, more tired than Marcus remembered. "I wondered when you'd show up," Derek said as Marcus sat down across from him. "I needed to understand what I was fighting against." "And what did you learn?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "That you're not wrong about everything. There are real costs to integration, real risks to human culture and economic security. I just think the costs of separation are worse." "How do you figure?" "Because isolation is death. Maybe not immediate, but eventual. The galaxy is moving forward with or without us. We can be part of building it, or we can be left behind to argue about what we used to be." Derek stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "You know what the irony is? I actually agree with most of what you're trying to do. I just don't think it has to cost us everything we are." "It doesn't. That's what I came back to prove." The legal case continued for another year, but by then, something had changed. Marcus's listening tour had sparked a new conversation, not about whether integration should happen, but about how it could happen in ways that preserved what was valuable about human culture, while embracing what was valuable about galactic civilization. When the final verdict came down, a compromise that allowed continued integration with enhanced protections for species-specific, cultural and economic interests, Marcus was back on Kepler 442c, watching the first families arrive to settle their new world. Human families. Zephyrian clutches, Klaxon colonies, and rock-being formations. all preparing to build something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly integrated society. Think it will work? Jennifer asked, joining him on the observation deck. Marcus watched a human child and a young Zephyrian chase each other through the landing facility while their parents discussed housing arrangements with a klaxon. Administrator, ask me in 20 years, he said, but I think we've got a chance. Below them, their world continued to bloom, carrying the hopes and dreams of species that had once been strangers, now learning to become something new together. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was a beginning, and sometimes Marcus thought a beginning was enough.